If you're reading through the Gospel of John, by the time you get to chapter 7, Jesus has created quite a stir among the people. The religious elite don't like him, the ordinary flock to hear him. In fact, the religious elite have sent officers to arrest him. And beginning in verse 43, there was a division among the people because of him, because of Jesus. Some of them wanted to take him. No one laid hands on him. Then the officers came to the chief priests and Pharisees and said to them, "Why have you not brought him?" The officer said, "No man ever spoke like this man." Now the Pharisees answered them, "Are you also deceived? Have any of the rulers of the Pharisees believed in him? But this crowd that does not know the law is accursed." I want to talk about ignorant arrogance for the time we have together, and really use this particular passage as a jumping off point to look at some related verses. But here, before we leave John chapter 7, they make this statement to the soldiers that come back that say, we didn't arrest him because we've never heard anybody talk like this. Are you also deceived? Have any of the rulers of the Pharisees believed in him? It's like saying, we know better than you. Yeah, but have you heard him? Well, maybe some of us have, maybe most of us haven't, but we know better than you. But this crowd that does not know the law is accursed. The people are just ignorant. Well, as we get into the story, that may not be exactly accurate, that it is those other people who are ignorant. After this happens, verse 50, Nicodemus, he who came to Jesus by night, being one of them, one of the Sanhedrin, said to them, "Does our law judge a man before it hears him and knows what he is doing?" And they don't like the question. In fact, Nicodemus is reprimanded for even bringing something like that up. Here's his question. Does our law judge a man before it hears him and knows what he is doing? It's a logical question. It actually goes back to a statement that you find in Deuteronomy. In the book of Deuteronomy, concerning individuals that have an accusation brought against them. This statement is found in chapter 1 and verse 17. You shall not show partiality in judgment. You shall hear the small as well as the great. You shall not be afraid in any man's presence, for the judgment is God's. The case that is too hard for you, bring to me, and I will hear it. You don't fail to bring somebody in to talk about that particular issue or that case, like the Pharisees have actually done. Don't listen to Jesus. Here's that question again that Nicodemus raises. Does our law judge a man before it hears him and knows what he is doing? No, it doesn't. Have these individuals never read Deuteronomy chapter 1 before? Or is it just conveniently easy to forget that that's a precept that was found in the law that they supposedly followed and required their fellow Israelites, that obviously were not as intelligent as they, it required them to follow as well? You're not even following it yourself. They continue in John chapter 7 with this statement. They answer Nicodemus and say, "Are you also from Galilee? Search and look, for no prophet has arisen out of Galilee." Interesting statement. And it's really self-imposed ignorance. Here's their statement. You search out, you take a look, you study, you do some research, see if you can find what we already know. No prophet has arisen out of Galilee. What's problematic with that? It's false. It's not true. Let's go back to the Old Testament, to 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 16. Instruction is given to anoint Elisha, the son of Shaphat, of Abel Meholah, to be anointed as a prophet in Elijah's place. The location, Abel Meholah, it's in Galilee. Surprise. Let's continue. Let's go to 2 Kings. 2 Kings, this time, chapter 14. Chapter 14, verse 25. Reference is made to Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet who is from Gath-hepher. The problem? Gath-hepher is in Galilee. How about Micah, chapter 1, verse 1? The word of the Lord that came to Micah of Moresheth in the days of Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, which he saw concerning Samaria and Jerusalem. The problem? It appears this place is in Galilee as well. Now here's a statement of the learned religious elite in the day of Jesus, where they tell Nicodemus, "Are you also from Galilee? Search and look, for no prophet has arisen out of Galilee." Ignorance that's arrogant. It's inexcusable. That point of view, that kind of stubborn mindset, that kind of dismissal of history was inexcusable then. It's just as inexcusable today. We live in a culture where people are actually trying to erase things in history or twist history to such an extent that it's not close to the events that actually took place. Reading things into certain items that really do not fit. And that seems to be the norm in higher education, in state universities and colleges. No wonder that we're living in an age of confusion. Here are the religious elite in that first century, members of the Sanhedrin Council. These individuals should be able to know exactly what the law of Moses says and be able to tell you where to find it. They ignore it, unless it's something that fits their scheme of things, their agenda, their mindset. It kind of fits something happens later on, this time the book of Acts. Sanhedrin again. But there's a gentleman that's been brought in front of them because he's been talking about Jesus, and they don't like what they hear. So Stephen stands up among them, and to defend himself, he goes back and gives them a brief history of the nation of Israel, to which they cannot argue. But he concludes with this, Acts chapter 7, verse 51 through 53. "You stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, you always resist the Holy Spirit, as your fathers did, so do you. Which of the prophets did your fathers not persecute? And they killed those who foretold the coming of the Just One, of whom you now have become the betrayers and murderers, who received the law by the direction of angels and have not kept it." That's the last straw. They drag him outside the city gates and stone him to death. How dare he say that? But he was right. So here in John chapter 7, the religious elite are using that kind of arrogance in connection with ignorance that's self-imposed to reach conclusions that are totally false. And we're not just talking about things that can happen in the religious world, because this kind of ignorant arrogance is all around us in the political spectrum or spectacle that we have to witness in this day and age. Pray for this nation. It's actually closed its eyes to a lot of things, just like the religious elite of the Sanhedrin in the days of Jesus. Interesting chapter. Please stay safe. We'll talk again soon.